Okay, so we looked at examples that were like this. 2 times x plus 6. Or maybe 2x times x plus 6. What happens when it's a binomial times a binomial? By binomial, we mean something that's got two terms, right? So it's in brackets, it's two terms, so that's a thing that we talk about to consider it all together. A binomial times a binomial. Multiplying two binomials, that's what we're doing. What does that look like? Well, it's the exact same principle. It's two brackets side by side still means multiply. So what it's saying is I multiply one bracket by the other bracket. Or in other words, everything in one bracket gets multiplied by everything in the other bracket. So I only have 2 and 2. It's fairly straightforward. Imagine I had 4 things in one and 4 things in the other. I'd have to multiply everything in one by everything in the other. You do a lot of multiplying. Fortunately, we don't really do that. So for this one, I just do x. I'm gonna think about the first bracket, take one thing out of the first bracket, and multiply it by everything in the other bracket. And when I'm done, go back to the first bracket and get the other stuff in there and multiply it too, right? So you want to do it as systematically as possible. If you start doing random things, you're going to lose track of what you've done. And again, we've talked about this, having a pattern, having an algorithm, doing it the same every time makes it easy, makes you notice patterns, that kind of thing. So we're going to do x times x and x times 6. Okay? And I get x times x is x squared, and x times 6 is 6x. Again, if we've been following along that and getting all this stuff all along the way last week, that should be pretty straightforward. Then I'm done, right? I've multiplied the x by everything in the other bracket. So I go back and I take the 3 and I multiply it by everything in the other bracket. And 3 times x is 3x, and 3 times 6 is 18. So 2 things and 2 things, all multiplied together, gave me 4 things. And in this first step, this is one of the patterns you want to start thinking about. In that first step, you've got 4 things. You will every time. If I take 2 binomials and multiply them by 2 other if I take a binomial and multiply it by another binomial, 2 things times 2 things, you're going to end up with 4 things every single time. But does anybody notice anything about what's happening in that first step that we've done? Like, am I done? Can I do anything else?
You created like terms.
What are the like terms?
6x and 3x.
Very nice. So the x squared is, there's no other x squared terms. 6x and 3x, I'm adding them now. I'm not multiplying anymore. I'm adding. There's lots of layers to this, right? These are the things where people make all kinds of mistakes. They're still thinking they're multiplying. But now we're adding. And I may or may not have like terms. So 6x times 6x plus 3x is 9x. And then I only have one constant, only one number with no x part. And then now I don't have any, I can't start mashing them together again. Right? People like to do that. They do all the steps properly, and then this is where they start just mashing things together that can't go together. Now that's done. So put your pencil down and look at it. We started with 2 binomials. The first step had 4 terms. The second step has 3 terms. Almost every time you do it, that's what's going to happen. Not quite every time. There's a couple of special cases where it doesn't happen. But you're going to notice that like 95% of the questions that you try are going to work out this way. That's a pattern I think you want to understand and think about, pay attention to, because then you'll know if your answer is reasonable. If for some reason you end up with only one term, you've done something wrong. If you still have 4 terms, maybe you're not finished yet. Right? So these are things that can help you keep on track. Any questions? Pretty straightforward, but it's going to get a little bit more complicated. Okay, let's try a few. Why don't you try this one? So 2 steps. 1 step to multiply, 1 step to collect like terms. That's why it says expand and simplify. Tamara, what'd you get for the first line here? You got the first line done, right? Yeah, x squared, good. Nice, plus 7x plus 2x plus 14. Now, I should have left a little bit of space, so just watch. If you got the same thing, that's awesome. If you got the next step, that's good too. How did Tamara get this? I'm going to guess. She did it right. And did x times x and x times 7. There's those first two terms. And then 2 times x and 2 times 7. There's the second two terms, right? 2 times x is 2x. 2 times 7 is 14. Very good. And then do you notice the same pattern? Now we're going to mix it up a little bit when we start doing the practice. Most of the ones we're going to see here are probably the same. But it's often the middle two terms that are like terms, but not always. Okay, so you can't judge just based on that. You got to know what a like term is. X squared is on its own. 7x plus 2x, 9x, and then 14. Okay, try the next one. Okay, so watch and see if you got the same thing. M times m, m squared. M times 5, 5m, so plus 5m. Watch your signs. Negative 4 times m, negative 4m, and negative 4 times positive 5 is negative 20. And then I get m squared. 5m minus 4m is 1m, so just plus m. Minus 20. How many people got that? Awesome. Okay, one more there to try. All right, what we get for the first step? Somebody want to fill us in here? Summer, did you do it? Nice. Signs are perfect. Everything looks good to me. And then negative 3y, again, it's that integer stuff. You got to recognize that as negative 3 minus 7. What does that work out to? Negative 10. So there's all different combinations of how the signs can work out. And that's part of what you're practicing. If this seems, if as you're doing this, you're still kind of like thinking, okay, what do I do this step? I'm not sure. What did I do last time? Like if you're still kind of having to think about it, you want to practice this enough till it gets like automatic. Like you just know what to do. And you just do it really quickly. Okay, so we're gonna start with just a little bit of practice. Maybe 5 minutes to try a handful of these. And then we're going to do some examples that are a bit trickier. So do as many of these as you can so that you start to really recognize the patterns. 4 terms, then 3 terms, and which terms add together and how that stuff works out.